Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a genuinely fascinating theory about the absolute future of global geopolitics. Based on our source material, we are going to unpack what's basically an architectural blueprint for a brand new model of global governance. The author argues, pretty convincingly actually, that our current political structures are fundamentally cracking under modern pressures. To survive, states literally need to build an entirely new foundation. So, if you love breaking down complex global systems into clear, visual logic, you are absolutely in the right place. Let's get right into it.
So, here's the big question to kick things off. Can a single state extending all the way from east to west actually be established? You know, in a world full of intense global power struggles, it's super tempting to think the ultimate solution to surviving oppression is just merging everything into one massive, monolithic megastate. But is that actually viable, or is it just a massive logistical nightmare waiting to happen? Well, the source text hits us with a really bold foundational premise right out of the gate. The era of the single state is over, period. The author argues that the traditional model of a totally isolated, independent nation-state is structurally obsolete now. In today's highly interconnected global fabric, standing completely alone isn't a symbol of strength anymore. It's actually a profound vulnerability. A solitary state simply cannot survive the crushing pressures of modern globalization on its own. To see exactly why the author believes this, and what the proposed alternative looks like, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the isolated state problem, followed by the megastate illusion. Then we'll explore the integration solution, before breaking down unifying sovereign ministries, and finally, the future of political entities.
Starting with Part 1, the isolated state problem. Vulnerability in isolation. The text argues that today, a solitary state is basically like a single brick trying to hold back a massive flood. In the modern global system, a state swimming completely on its own is incredibly vulnerable. Without deep integration, history shows us it just gets targeted and picked off by larger global powers and alliances. The text makes it super clear. Relying solely on your own isolated institutions in a world dominated by massive economic and military blocs, it's just not going to work long-term. You'll inevitably face economic strangulation or complete structural failure, simply because you lack the unified weight to push back against oppression. Moving on to Part 2, the megastate illusion, why monolithic fails. Okay, so if being totally isolated is a fatal flaw, why not just go the other way? Why not create a single global megastate stretching from east to west? Well, the author argues this is an absolute logistical nightmare for a few key reasons. First off, there's a total lack of cultural homogeneity. You have completely distinct local customs and traditions that you just can't erase from a distant capital. Plus, a vast geographic spread naturally weakens administrative discipline. The bigger the territory, the harder it is to manage. And administratively, the text points out that dealing with multiple different languages fundamentally breaks down the creation of unified electronic systems. It just kills bureaucratic efficiency. Finally, because local customs vary so wildly, it's practically impossible to enforce one single set of laws universally without sparking massive unrest.
So it all really boils down to this direct contrast. On one side, you've got the weak, isolated state, highly vulnerable, zero leverage, and incredibly easy for larger adversaries to crush. On the exact opposite side, you have the monolithic megastate, completely impossible and destined to collapse under its own massive cultural and administrative weight. Both extremes share the exact same fatal flaw. They totally failed to balance the very real need for immense global strength with the reality of deeply rooted local identities.
Which brings us to Part 3, the integration solution. Integration, not dissolution. To solve this massive dilemma, the source material proposes a highly structured middle ground. It's a system that integrates states for sheer power and protection, but, and this is absolutely crucial, without dissolving their unique local identities. The text lays out a gradual step-by-step procedure to build this federated union from the ground up. Step 1 is establishing shared overarching concepts among the participating independent states. Step 2 requires deep economic and customs integration. Think of it as laying the logistical pipeline to seamlessly connect these regions. And finally, Step 3, the ultimate goal, unifying the sovereign ministries at the very top level, which forms a massive protective canopy over the individual states. The author conceptualizes this end goal as the United Islamic States, or a similarly united structural model. We're talking about a proposed political entity made up of multiple distinct states functioning smoothly inside a single political structure.
It actively unites sovereign power at the absolute highest level, while strictly keeping local governance and deep cultural autonomy at the bottom. By doing this, it builds a highly robust, oppression-resistant ecosystem. It's kind of like an interconnected, heavily fortified architectural framework.
Let's look at Part 4, Unifying Sovereign Ministries, the Structural Framework.
So how is the power actually divided here to avoid that megastate trap we just talked about? The text is very clear on this. To form an effective, impenetrable shield over the wider union, 4 specific, critical sovereign ministries have to be aggressively centralized. We're talking foreign affairs, defense, the economy, and intelligence. By locking these 4 massive pillars together at the multinational level, the wider union instantly gets unparalleled global leverage. But at the same time, it intentionally leaves all the other daily, citizen-facing ministries strictly up to the local states.
This creates a really brilliant, logical division of labor. Up at the top level, the unified sovereign ministries handle the big stuff: broad strategic vision, global defense initiatives, and macroeconomics. But down at the local level, state autonomy takes full charge of day-to-day reality. They manage their own distinct local customs, they keep their regional languages, and they handle daily administration, like healthcare and local courts. So the local states get to keep their completely unique cultural identities intact while directly benefiting from the massive security umbrella of those top-level unified ministries. You can really just picture it as a massive, deeply secure umbrella. The top coordinates the global strategy and defends the perimeter, right? But it completely refuses to micromanage the intricate daily lives of the populations beneath it. It really represents the ultimate structural ideal: deep, powerful global integration entirely without cultural erasure.
Finally, Part 5, Future of Political Entities, a New Global Balance.
So if this integrated, multi-state model actually happens, what are the expected global outcomes according to our source? Well, the strategic benefits outlined are pretty game-changing. First, it creates a massively larger administrative volume, giving the Union a much heavier center of gravity. Second, it naturally leads to significantly stronger global influence and raw negotiating power. Third, it provides dramatically wider geographic authority and border security. And fourth, this is a super fascinating point from the text, it offers built-in protection for non-Islamic minority states. The author specifically notes that distinct minority entities can just step right under this protective umbrella. They fully retain their own religion, their own localized laws, and complete internal autonomy, simply in exchange for the vast security provided by those unified top-level ministries.
I want to take a second to reflect on this incredibly powerful analogy. Straight from the text, the single state is essentially a single individual within the fabric of the modern global system. It perfectly nails the author's core thesis. In a highly aggressive world full of interconnected networks and massive military alliances, pretending you can just survive indefinitely as an isolated individual is basically structural denial. Unity, in some calculated federated form, isn't just an ideal anymore. It's an absolute requirement for basic survival.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought to chew on. How will modern states rapidly adapt to these inevitable structural shifts to avoid global oppression? Whether the future looks exactly like the specific unified framework we've explored today, or if it takes another federated form entirely, the source material makes an intensely logical case that the era of swimming alone is truly over. Thanks so much for joining me for this deep dive, and keep questioning the complex structures around you.